My name is Hamza Ahmed, and my background, education-wise, I got my bachelor's degree in linguistics from St. Cloud State University in order to teach English to Somali refugees and also to teach English overseas in the Middle East. And now I'm pursuing a master's degree at the Divinity School at the University of Chicago in religious studies, focusing on Islam, especially medieval Islamic manuscripts. Well, I mean, Islam, literally it means submission or surrendering to God. So to me, you know, Islam is just that. It's the same thing that Jesus did. It's the same thing that Moses did, Abraham, and all the prophets.
Recently there was a video that came out, produced by CNN.
Mm-hmm.
There was a young man who is a recent convert to Islam, from Belgium. And there was a Q&A between the reporter and the young man from Belgium. And one of the questions that was asked was, if he was ordered to kill, will he do it? And he said, yes, it's Sharia law. What is your view on that?
Well, I've seen the video and I think that the kid is very misguided. If ordered to kill, there's nothing in Sharia law that says you have to follow order this or that and go kill somebody, just like what he's saying. You know, the thing is that the word Sharia in Arabic, it means path to water or path to goodness. And in the Islamic context, it means the path to God. It's your personal relationship with God, and it mostly has to do with ritual worship like fasting and praying and making pilgrimage and those things. I mean, he's just so far off from the regular Islamic paradigm.
How so?
Well, you know, that person was brainwashed by ISIS. And ISIS, they have their own interpretation of Islam that is very, very far from all the other interpretations that exist out there, where they're very violent. And you know, they believe that they must have a caliphate and that they do have a caliphate and that they can give orders and people are supposed to follow those orders. But
as a Muslim who's a convert, new to Islam, do you believe the idea that somebody is going to convince you that they will be eventually a caliphate, or you know, the path to Islam, greatness is through the caliphate? What's your view on that?
Well, you know, many scholars of Islam, from, you know, Muslim scholars of Islam, that they themselves said a caliphate isn't necessary. We have a bunch of Muslim countries that are all in international treaties, and that's good enough. And as Muslims, we have to follow those treaties.
The thing that is also mostly forgotten is a lot of people have an idea about recent converts. These are people that have recently converted to Islam, and eventually, you know, they end up, you know, they end up doing something bad in the name of Islam. What is your specific view of that?
I mean, you know, here in the United States, about 65% of the people who did join ISIS are converts, but they're brand new converts most of the time, a year or two or even less than a year. And so, you know, some people question, were these people terrorist or criminal or mentally ill, and then they converted and then they used Islam as a platform, you know, to get fame or those types of things. So, you know, the people who convert, they don't have a lot of knowledge about Islam. It takes years to learn about Islam. You know, there's many different interpretations of Islam out there. You know, if they're isolated and only getting information from the internet, well, they're going to get misinformation. The internet's full of more misinformation than it is true information. And that's often what's happening.
You have a great book in your hand. Can you tell us about what the book is about?
So this book,
and why that is important to you?
This book is called Refuting ISIS. It's from Muhammad Ya'qubi, who is a scholar from Syria, from Damascus, Syria. Comes from a long line of scholars. And this is just a proof that, you know, not all Muslims believe the same thing. Many different Muslims have many different interpretations. If someone says Islam is this, Sharia is this, Well, to who? You know, to which Muslim believes that? When and where? Because they all have different beliefs about it. And this is a direct refutation of, you know, ISIS ideologies and interpretations.
You converted to Islam. I grew up as a Muslim. I was born as a Muslim. And there was nowhere about Islam that told me I can be violent, I can go kill innocent people. You being a recent Muslim, a recent convert, what's your view on that? Have you ever been told that you can kill somebody? Has somebody ever said to the notion that the idea that Islam is for violence?
Well, you know, I converted 2010, and from the very beginning it was always taught that Islam comes from the Arabic root salama, which means peace. Okay, so the etymological meaning of the word Islam is peace, and at Muslims our greeting is Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. So, you know, violence was never a part of anything that, you know, I studied or learned in my madrasa education.
Why do you think people gravitate to groups like ISIS, and why do we call them Islamic terrorism?
I think people gravitate towards it for, you know, a large number of different reasons. It's going to be different for every single person, but, you know, Muslims, especially in the West, they are very marginalized. They face a lot of Islamophobia, and some of them are pushed out of the society, pushed out of the mainstream, and they feel resentful. You know, there's a number of reasons, but it seems that the places where the most, you could say, Westerners join Islam, they seem to have the most racism and Islamophobia. Those people are very marginalized, and they're kind of pushed out of mainstream society. And I think that there's a lot of resentment because of that. And at the same time, it seems like a lot of these people, they seem to have some emotional problems or instability in their life to begin with. And you know, I don't think the government is doing enough to empower Muslims to combat extremism within their own community. And these people are also people who stay very isolated. They don't go to the mosques. They don't go to the traditional Islamic scholars. They, you know, they cut themselves off from society in general. So I think those type of people are most likely to be radicalized and, you know, try to go overseas.
What other ways can people do to help someone if you see someone that is headed that way and you have a feeling that, or you have a conversation? What other ways can you, the Muslim community, do to help with that conversation?
Well, like I said, the number one thing is these people are very isolated, first of all. So we have to reach out to them constantly, and some of them they don't want to be reached out to, so that can be quite difficult. But as a Muslim community, whenever someone converts, we have to make sure that we're always trying to reach out to them and trying to talk with them and trying to include them in everything that we can, and trying to help them, because a lot of them, they convert and they have very difficult life situations. Maybe they're homeless, you know, maybe they just lost their job or their car or something like that. And, you know, if you do see someone who says very
recent CNN interview, a young man. You watched the clip.
Yeah, I did.
What do you think? Can you give us 3 or 4 things that you've seen maybe that are really contradictory to what you know about Islam?
Well, it was very sad for me to watch someone that brainwashed, you know, someone who's clearly fundamentalist, clearly extremist, and so far away from traditional Islam. You know, it really broke my heart, because what they believe about the most basic fundamental things couldn't be more different than what Islam is to me. You know, Sharia to me, it isn't this law that you implement over non-Muslims. Sharia to me, it's about ritual worship, and it's about getting close to God, and it's about having good manners and character with other people. You know, and if you take that element out of it, then it's something totally different.
Do you think it was a fair representation of Islam, comparing Islam with ISIS from the video you watched?
Well, in the video it seemed like they only wanted to give ISIS's point of view. They didn't want to say this is what other Muslims believe in contrast. So, I mean, they did a pretty good depiction of a fundamentalist extremist, right. But not of your average, Muslim out there in the world. You got Muslims in so many different countries, from Morocco all the way to Indonesia. There's so many different, ethnicities and understandings of Islam, from the very, very mystical to the very, very fundamental.
And that's the amazing thing about Islam is there are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world.
Right.
Tell me, could all those people be violent?
Well, if they all had fundamentalist extremist views, you'd think a lot more crazy things would happen in the world, a lot more attacks, a lot more violence. But instead you see the opposite, that Muslim governments are trying very, very hard to stamp out, extremist ideologies. You see it in Egypt, you see it in Saudi Arabia, you see it in many, many different countries.
Could they also be blamed in this idea of extremism in some of these countries, like Saudi Arabia, Egypt? Could they also take the blame?
I think they could do more. I definitely think they could do more. I don't know, if blaming might be the right word, but I think they could definitely do more to combat extremism and combat this takfiri ideology, is what we call it in the Islamic tradition, which is takfir means excommunication. So fundamentalists by nature, they want to excommunicate all the other Muslims, say they're non-Muslims, and that's how they justify violence against them. So I think combating that is really important to do. But I don't think the governments are really doing enough, including the American government and the Muslim governments.
Is there anything you want to add that you have forgotten or you want to say from watching the video or from your understanding of Islam?
The most important takeaway, I think, for people who don't know a whole lot about Islam is that just like in Christianity, you have Catholics, you have Protestants, you have Puritans, you have Southern Baptists and Lutherans and Calvinists and all these different denominations. Islam in the same way is also very heterogeneous. You have many different ideologies, many different groups, many different theologies, many different belief systems about Islam. Religion is just a reaction to Scripture. And so people will react in different ways to the Quran. They'll interpret the Quran in different ways. They'll understand it in different ways. They'll understand the Sharia in different ways. And that's why you have 3 different schools of theological thought in Sunni Islam. You have 4 different schools of Islamic jurisprudence in Sunni Islam. And in Shia Islam, you have 12ers, you have 7ers, you have 5er Shias. It's all very, very diverse and very multicultural with many different languages and understandings. And just like Christianity. So, you can't say all Muslims are this. Islam is this, Sharia is this, and paint it all with the same brushstroke, which is too often what the media does.